Well, let's go ahead and hear some excerpts from classic presentations by Bob Benson on today's Focus on the Family broadcast.
Let me tell you a couple of things, and just to stay in the realm of being called a preacher, I want to read a text. And then in Colossians, the 3rd chapter, and the 16th verse. Sing thankfully in your hearts to God with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Whatever you are doing, whether you speak or act, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. In my collection of very personal and private papers at home, on a piece of notebook paper, there is a scribbled letter from my daughter, Lee. She wrote it to me when she was 14. It was a letter that she was writing at the beauty shop when she was getting her long hair cut. Lee and I didn't want her hair cut. Her mother did. So it would be easier to get ready to go to school quicker. And she's gotten it down to an hour and a half now. It was, she seemed to feel it was somehow symbolic because she wanted to write me one more time before her hair was cut. She wrote a little bit and then kind of lost her train of thought. And over in the margin, over on the other side of the red line, over where the 3 holes are, she just did a little thing down the border, and it said, "Things I think of when I think of Daddy." And then she drew little pictures. She drew a tennis racket. I like to play, but I'm not very good. And then she drew a picture of Peggy and said, "Mom." Fortunately, she said, "Things I think of when I think of Dad, not necessarily in this order." There were several things. She mentioned one of the things was the Refero Hotel. I don't know where you're staying, but it's better than the Refero. On one of our vacations with my fine planning and all, we arrived in a town and in a driving rainstorm, and they all went shopping, and I was left to find a place to stay. And the older boy said, "Find us a real groovy place, far out." And I did. It was we stayed on the 3rd floor, and it was a walk-up hotel, and there was just one bathroom for the whole floor, and just little things my family wasn't into really good. She drew some other things. She drew the tractor, because I've always had trouble with machinery. I don't think there'll be any tractors in heaven. Things I think of when I think of Dad. Can you see my tractor? Is it yellow? Or is it blue? Is it a Ford or is it a Cub lowboy? Can you see the Refero Hotel? Is it a frame building? Or is it a brick building? Doesn't mean anything to you, does it? But those little sketches down the side of that page brought back a flood of memories to me, because Lee and I had lived out those things together. I can see the Refero. I can see the looks on their faces when they saw. I can see my tractor. Incidentally, it's yellow and it's a Cub lowboy. The jumper cables are red. But you see, it is in the processes of life that these particular things have meaning to Lee and I. I think maybe that was part of what Paul was saying when he was saying, whatever you are doing, in everything. If he won't mind me translating a little different this morning, I would like to say, whatever you are doing, in everything, get to know Jesus. We ought to know Jesus. What does his voice sound like? Is he a tenor? Is he a bass? Does he whisper? Does he shout? Down across the living of your days and the walking of your way with him, you should know what his voice sounds like. He shouldn't have to say, hello, Jim, this is God. No. He should just have to say, Jim. I was down in Florida last fall, and I was preaching just forcefully like I am now. The crowd was absolutely spellbound, as you are. Or exhausted, one of the two. And I was talking about these things and what the Lord had meant to me and how I'd been a Christian for 30 years and what it was meaning to me these days and how great it was from this great background of experience. After the service, I was standing down at the front and I was just mobbed, you know. There must have been at least 5 people came down there. And while I was talking to them, this lovely, elegant, distinguished black lady came and stood over here. And when I'd finished talking to these people, she came across and said, I want to meet you. My name is Olive. And I took her by the hand and I said, Olive, it's really nice to meet you. In the first place, I know where you sit. You sat right over there, and you were such a fine listener. You just nodded when I was doing good. Didn't look at your watch the whole time. You cried a bit and laughed and said amen. It was just nice. No telling what I could do if I could speak to a whole crowd of people like you. She said, oh, that's good. She said, but I want to tell you something. I said, all right. She said, I am 74 years old. And when I was 12, I gave my heart to Jesus Christ. And I want to tell you something, boy. You don't know nothing yet. I tell you, I looked around for somebody who was 92. Isn't it wonderful to know that all the things we feel today, because of all the experiences and the places that we've come from, the meaning we have today, isn't it just fine to know that if we wait another year and come back and sing these songs, they'll just mean more? Because we've walked with him. Because we've heard his voice. Because we've cried with him, sang with him, been with him. In everything, get to know Jesus.
Oh, what a great privilege it is to sample just a taste of the wisdom of the late Mr. Bob Benson on this special 30th anniversary Focus on the Family broadcast. We so enjoy that man and are glad to have this opportunity to present his perspectives on life. If you'd like to have this in your library, CDs and online listening, for that matter, are available at family.org. Well, let's turn a corner now and pick up this message at a different spot where the late Bob Benson is referring to the 15th chapter of John, the portion where Jesus said, "You did not choose me, but I chose you." The late Bob Benson on Focus on the Family.
These have been days in my life when I have been trying to learn more about the meaning of live in me as I live in you. And one of the first conclusions I have come to is that this shared life, this life that he lives in me as I live in him, begins in his love for me. He chose me. Now, I want to tell you right away that I likes to be chose. You can't tell it by looking at me, but at times in my life I have been sick. I've always been weak and sickly, it seems. It looks like, well, once I got up to about 163, but I look like a squirrel with a couple of acorns in his mouth. It looks like this is going to be about it. Although, to tell you the truth, I lose about 1/8 of an inch a year these days, so I hope I don't live too long. I can remember going to grammar school, and we'd go out to recess. You remember how the teacher picked the 2 biggest kids in the class to be captains of the softball team? And they, in turn, picked themselves to be the pitcher. And then they chose the rest of the kids for size, for athletic ability, for friendship, for skill, because they had a first baseman's mitt or some reason. Until finally the teacher would say, "Well, we can't play till somebody takes Bob." When those big kids would kick the dirt and say, "We'll take him." And I was usually sent out to play pigtail behind the right fielder. I don't think I ever came up to bat until I was in the 8th grade. Kind of struck out then. So I want to tell you right away, I likes to be chose. And I like these words. They mean something to me right away when I read, "You did not choose me." Oh. I chose you. We sometimes have the idea that the way it is we're going down through life and things all of a sudden aren't going too well, and we see him and we say, "Oh, I believe I'll choose him, and he could bring my life together and put it together for me and make me the person I'd like to be." That's not the way it was at all. The way it was this. You were going down the road, and he saw you. And he said, "Well, I'll take him. I'll take her. You be on my side. I got a place for you." I was chosen. And that has made all the difference. Now, there are a couple of things about being chosen I want to suggest to you this morning. The first is this. You can't understand the choices of God by looking at the choosee. And if you think that about me, think how much I think about you. I know I'm an improbable choice. This voice and not a very big body. Do you ever try to make it through life in a body this size? You can't understand the choice of God
by looking at the choosy. You understand it by looking in the heart of the chooser. He chooses us because he loves us. You know what it means to you to say Jesus, don't you? You think back across your days. Where you lost your job, or your mom died, or the baby was sick. Think of the times you breathed that name. Oh, what the name Jesus means to us. Could you believe this word? It means every bit as much to him to say your name. Could you believe him what he said? You did not choose me. I chose you. I picked you. I took you. So you got a wart on your nose. Who cares? But you. Well, maybe the people have to eat across from you. I chose you. I picked you. This day, Lord, you who have loved us so much, now, Lord, you must give us faith somehow, and imagination to even begin to believe how much you have loved us. May we reach out to thee this day.
Today's program was provided by Focus on the Family and was hosted by psychologist and author Dr. James Dobson. Thanks for tuning in. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back next time when we'll hear more of this classic presentation from the late Bob Benson, and once again turn our hearts toward home.